The night everything cracked open began with a smell I could never forget, a sharp medicinal scent cutting through the stale air of the hospital corridor, mixing with fear, guilt, and something heavier than grief. My hands were trembling, not because of the cold, but because I knew that no matter what happened next, my life had already split into a before and an after. Somewhere behind that closed door, consequences were breathing, waiting for me to finally look them in the eye. Before this moment, I had believed that survival meant keeping your head down, doing just enough, and convincing yourself that intention mattered more than impact. I had spent years perfecting the art of explaining myself away. I thought I understood pain. I thought I had seen everything. I was wrong. If this opening already has your heart beating a little faster, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who loves deep stories, leave a comment with your thoughts so far, and subscribe to the channel Stories Beyond the Porch, because what comes next is not just a story, it is a reckoning. I grew up in a narrow house at the edge of a crowded town, where walls were thin and secrets thinner. Responsibility was a word adults used when they were tired, usually right before disappointment followed. I learned early that admitting fault made life harder, not easier, so I became careful, calculated, always ready with a harmless explanation. When something broke, I fixed it just enough to look whole. When someone got hurt, I convinced myself it wasn't really my doing. This habit followed me into adulthood like a shadow that lengthened with every passing year. I worked as a junior attendant in a long-term care facility, the kind of place families visited less and less often, trusting strangers to do the loving work they no longer had time for. I told myself I chose the job because I cared. In truth, it was because the pay was steady and the expectations felt manageable. I wasn't a doctor, I wasn't a decision maker. I was just someone who followed routines, applied ointments, changed dressings, and ticked boxes on charts. That distance made it easy to believe that outcomes were never really in my hands. One evening, everything blurred together the way it always did. The hum of fluorescent lights, the slow beeping of machines, the murmured complaints of aching bodies that had outlived their strength. I was tired in the bone, deep way that makes shortcuts feel reasonable. A patient had developed a severe skin infection, something that required careful monitoring, cleanliness, and patience. I did what I had done dozens of times before, moving quickly, telling myself that experience compensated for fatigue. I applied ointment, wrapped the area, and moved on, already thinking about the end of my shift. But carelessness has a quiet voice. It doesn't scream when it arrives. It whispers that one missed step doesn't matter, that tomorrow will fix what today neglects. By morning, the infection had worsened. By afternoon, it had spread. The room filled with professionals whose expressions carried a gravity I had never seen directed at me before. The air felt heavier, as if the building itself was holding its breath. I stood at the edge, small and invisible, rehearsing the explanation that had always saved me. I told myself I had done my part. I had put ointment. I had followed what I remembered. I had meant well. Then came the moment that still echoes in my chest. A senior nurse, someone who had spent decades watching the fragile line between care and harm, looked at me with eyes that held no anger, only unbearable clarity. She said that I had seen everything, and that responsibility did not disappear just because I wanted it to. Her words were not sharp, but they cut deeper than shouting ever could. I responded the only way I knew how, clinging to the smallest defense, insisting that I had only applied ointment, as if that single act could erase everything I failed to do. What followed was not immediate punishment or dramatic collapse. It was worse. It was waiting. Days of uncertainty, investigations, paperwork, and long walks home where every step felt heavier than the last. I replayed the scene over and over, searching for a version where I was less to blame. Sleep came in fragments. Food tasted like nothing. For the first time in my life, my usual explanations rang hollow even to me. The patient survived, but not without lasting damage. That knowledge settled into me like a stone. I was not fired. I was not publicly shamed. Instead, I was required to attend retraining, supervision, and counseling. The system offered me a chance to learn, but it did not offer me the comfort of denial. Every session peeled back another layer of the story I told myself about who I was. I began to notice things I had ignored before, how often I rushed, how easily I minimized small details, how quickly I distanced myself from outcomes I didn't like. Responsibility, I learned, was not about blame alone. It was about presence, about staying with the consequences of your actions instead of stepping away from them. Outside of work, my life mirrored the same pattern. Friends I had disappointed with broken promises. Family members I had hurt with casual neglect. Moments where I had chosen convenience over care and then wondered why relationships felt fragile. The story at work cracked something open, and suddenly I could see the fractures everywhere. Change did not come as a dramatic transformation. It came as discomfort, as slowing down when I wanted to rush, as double-checking when no one was watching, as sitting with guilt instead of smoothing it over. There were days I wanted to quit, to escape the constant reminder of my failure. But something held me there, a quiet understanding that leaving would only repeat the pattern. Months passed. Trust was not handed back to me. It was rebuilt in small, uncelebrated ways, a careful note, an extra minute spent listening. A task done thoroughly even when exhaustion pressed hard. I learned the names of patients' fears, not just their conditions. I learned that care was not a checklist but a commitment. The memory of that night never left, but it changed shape. It stopped being a source of paralyzing shame and became a compass. Whenever I felt myself drifting toward excuses, I remembered that closed door, that smell, that realization that intention without responsibility is empty. Near the end of this story, as I look back now, I understand something I wish I had known earlier. Seeing everything is not a burden unless you refuse to act on it. Responsibility is heavy, yes, but it is also what gives our actions meaning. The ointment was never the point. The point was everything around it that I failed to honor. If this story has reached into your chest, if it has reminded you of a moment you wish you had handled differently or a responsibility you've been avoiding, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Stories Beyond the Porch. Your engagement helps these stories find the people who need them most. And before you go, I have a special request. Please comment below with one line about a lesson life taught you the hard way. Your words might be the reason someone else finds the courage to take responsibility today.